Rankings are overrated.
You are Locked On Women's Basketball, your daily podcast on women's basketball. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Locked On Women's Basketball. I'm Clea Butler, the sideline reporter for the Chicago Sky. Joined with me is Sophia Jones, the analyst for the Golden State Valkyries. This is going to be an exciting episode, so stay with us. So much to talk about. First of all, Iowa on top, upsets people, upsets. We'll get into it. Literally, the whole theme of today is upsets. But the SEC opening play was a nail biter, and we have to jump right into that. We just finished watching Kentucky against LSU, and it was not the ending we anticipated. Kentucky ends up upsetting LSU 80-78 within the final minutes of the game. And I feel as though we would be remiss to not start this episode by talking about Tonie Morgan, who hit the game-winning three to seal the deal. LSU, towards the end of the fourth quarter, had a field goal in almost 4 minutes and 30 seconds. Mikaylah Williams takes the ball. She gets fouled at the three-point line, gets 3 free throws, makes all 3. We're thinking, okay, game is over. They're not really going to come back from that. But Tonie Morgan comes back and hits a game-winning 3 in the final seconds. Coming into today's game, she had only made 8 threes the entire start of the season and went 3 for 3 today.
She was incredible the entire matchup, but in that last moment, you talk about the very last play of the game, or for Kentucky, it was a broken possession, what it appeared like a lot. They were trying to get Strack posted up on the block one-on-one, but it was a really difficult entry pass. You could see Morgan just dribbling out on the perimeter, and she was like, you know what? It's my turn, I guess. And she cashed that shot. And Kentucky's bench went wild. It was a crazy ending with 0.5 seconds left. LSU, they got the ball inbounded, but not only did the shot didn't count, but it did not go in. But Kentucky was really the team that showed more resiliency down the stretch, like you mentioned. LSU, they were 0 of their last 6 field goals. So you talk about those Mikaylah Williams free throws. That was the majority of the offense that they were seeing down the stretch, but no field goals in the last 5 minutes of the game. So they just really went through an offensive lull, and Kentucky capitalized that, specifically Morgan. She finished with 24 points, 12 assists, and 0 turnovers. She had an incredible all-around game.
And I think we also have to add a little fun fact that was brought up on the broadcast, that the average height of Kentucky was 6'1". These were some big girls playing basketball. I personally have really enjoyed their head coach, Kenny Brooks, since he was at Virginia Tech. And it just seems every single season he is constantly upgrading. I think we remember at Virginia Tech, he has Liz Kitley, but he also has little Georgia Amore. He said, you know what, we're just going to keep super sizing the team. We're in the SEC now. These are some big girls. We got to have big girls to play with. Another player I think needs to be mentioned, Clara Strack, who also was pretty significant at the end. She hit that really nice floater. I was not anticipating that footwork from her. Nice floater that tied the game essentially. She was 6 of 13 on the day, 3 of 7 from free throw range, and she had 9 rebounds. And then Teonni Key also had a really great game today as well. She finished with 17 points and 16 rebounds. She was tenacious on the boards.
Yeah, that front court duo did their thing tonight for Strack. I was really impressed with the fact that she picked up 3 pretty quick and early fouls and didn't really pick up too many for the rest of the game. She had that crucial one against Mikaylah Williams at the end that sent her to the free throw line for those 3 free throws. But other than that, she did a solid job of defending without fouling. As for Key, I think she was a huge reason why Kentucky won this game. Those 16 rebounds were so important. She extended a lot of possessions, grabbing a couple offensive boards, and a really good interior presence as well. But when you talk about the overall height of Kentucky, it really reflected itself in the rebounding battle. The Wildcats out-rebounded the Tigers 45-29. So they really dominated that area of the game. Offensive rebound, they had the advantage 17-4, and second chance points 18-4. So LSU actually shot better than Kentucky from field goal, three-pointers, free throws, all of it. It's just that Kentucky got so many of these extra opportunities from either the free throw line or from their own offensive rebounding that helped to give them the edge.
Yeah, I think that's where, the size does come in and helps out a little bit. Everybody was boxing out. Everybody's grabbing boards, even if they're not really boxing out. They were a very long team. And as you mentioned, those offensive boards really kept it throughout, because when we're talking about LSU now, it truly looked as though LSU was going to walk away with the game at any point. The game was held close basically the whole time, but LSU had started to build a little bit of momentum, especially towards the end of the third quarter. I think they pulled away to as many as like a 9-point lead. They were stretching the game out a little bit, but Kentucky, as you mentioned earlier, just showed a little bit more resilience in the game. I also felt as though LSU, they played really strong defensive stances the entirety of the game, but once it got to the late point execution, it didn't look as disciplined as it did to start the game.
And I would say that the word discipline would probably be accurate at the beginning of the game. Honestly, throughout the majority of the game, they really packed the paint because Kentucky didn't really connect all that much from the three. Kentucky only shot 30%. They were 8 of 27, so very high volume, but not a ton connected. And so when they were sticking to those principles, it really forced Kentucky to be stagnant within their offense. But like you said, just start to get a little bit loose that LSU did. And we saw a couple of those fouls that they started to pick up, sending them to the line, a couple of just maybe not the best shot selection by LSU as well that just led to Kentucky pushing in the other direction. I felt like Mikaylah Williams, definitely the highlight for LSU. She started the game really hot for them and continued that the majority of the matchup. She finished with 26 points, 8 rebounds, 5 assists. She was the main offensive shot maker for LSU, and it was important that she was because she really created her own looks. Kentucky, they blew up a lot of actions, so LSU didn't get a ton that was just off of a set. But when a play started to break down, Mikaylah Williams was more than likely the one with the ball in her hands and just use that shiftiness to get a mid-range pull-up to go, which felt like such a great shot, but felt like also a solid performance from Amaya Joyner. She finished with 14 points, 7 of 8 field goals. She was always in the right place in the right time. And she just got some of these dump-off pass and went right up with it, got a couple of rebounds. I felt like that was extremely valuable. But I would have liked to see a little bit more from Flau'jae Johnson down the stretch. She had 15 points, 7 of 13, so she was efficient. But when you're looking at who's going to lead you and help to land the plane in a clutch scenario, you look towards your upperclassmen and those who have been around before. And I think Flau'jae needs to be that person with the ball in her hands and really cement her control over the game.
Yeah, she's truly the main piece from that national championship team that kind of has to hold it down for them, especially in these late conference games. LSU will go on to play another ranked opponent in Vanderbilt, who's currently sitting at number 12 on Sunday, while Kentucky will go on to play Missouri also on Sunday. This is a big win for Kentucky to kind of cement themselves in the SEC and obviously get an upset early on, opening up SEC play too. But coming up next, your favorite team might have lost today. Fridays already feel different during basketball season, and FanDuel is making them even better. Every Friday night before the game tips off, FanDuel gives fans a new way to kick off the weekend with NBA Happy Hour. NBA Happy Hour is your official pregame, a limited time window where special offers drop right inside the FanDuel app before the action starts. Opening the FanDuel app during Happy Hour always brings something new. Boosts, bonuses, and surprises. So before tip-off, check the FanDuel app and see what's dropping during NBA Happy Hour every Friday from 6 to 7:30 Eastern. A little basketball, a little action, and a whole lot of Friday energy. That's NBA Happy Hour only on FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NBA. So this whole list is going to be upsets today, which I think to both Sophia and I came at a little bit of a surprise because these are all, mind you, it's just one loss, but these are all teams that we have spoke very highly about basically the entire beginning of the season. But the first upset we're going to talk about is Illinois going up against number 7th ranked Maryland. They won by 3 points. Barry Wallace for the Illini, 22 points, and was just kind of really calmly hitting a lot of clutch free throws towards the end. She had 15 seconds to seal the win, and she did that. Parchment came in with 17 points and 8 rebounds, had a strong overall presence, and then Gretchen Dolan, 17 points. It was just key to scoring, especially late, because Illinois sort of came back in this game. They had a late rally that led them to have that 3-point win.
Yes, it was extremely back and forth the majority of the game. Then it felt like Illinois might have pulled away a little bit. They did leave the door open for Maryland to try to make something happen, but Maryland just really couldn't convert. They had a couple of turnovers that Illinois just capitalized on. You mentioned the free throws that really helped to ice the game, but this was a major upset, definitely, because Maryland, this is their first loss of the season, and they have been looking extremely dominant up until this point. So it's kind of like seeing one of the titans of NCAA women's basketball appear vulnerable with this loss. But Illinois, they put together an incredible game. They won on their home floor as well, so they got a nice boost from the home crowd, but just a really gritty win for them. I think that is the best word that I could use. Just down the stretch, it felt like they really wanted it.
Yeah, you mentioned turnovers. Illinois capitalized on 18 of Maryland's turnovers, which came really late in the game too. Again, we talk about this late game push that Illinois had, but this is also the first top 10 Big Ten opponent in program history that Illinois has won. And Illinois, obviously, Sophia, I'm rooting for any team that's Chicagoland area, Illinois, whatever the case may be. But we were talking, and I said, Illinois is a very strong program. It can't be a sleeper team within the Big Ten. And I think I said that the day prior to this game. And then
you definitely called it. You definitely called it. I will, all your flowers, you deserve them because you definitely called this one.
I said Illinois is a sleeper team. Don't sleep on Illinois. Another big upset on the day, Georgia Tech and Notre Dame. This game went into overtime. Notre Dame is currently sitting at 18th, but they lost 95-90 to Georgia Tech, which was a little bit of a wild game. It was kind of all over the place for a little while, especially once they hit overtime. It was just kind of like somebody get the ball, somebody make something happen. It's crunch time. But Talia Walker for Georgia Tech, she had some big buckets late in the game, and she was kind of the driving factor of them being able to pull off the upset.
Definitely. And this is probably the most upset of an upset game that we are talking about today, because Georgia Tech, they're only 1-2 in ACC play. So this was actually a pretty resume, whatever the opposite of boosting is, loss for Notre Dame. They're sitting at that 18 seed. That'll definitely drop and be in jeopardy. But Georgia Tech just wore Notre Dame down, I think, in that overtime period, especially outscored them 15-10. It was an extremely high-scoring game throughout, very frantic, a lot of offense. Even in the fourth quarter, Georgia Tech, they outscored Notre Dame 27-21. So both these teams were putting a lot of points on the board, but Notre Dame only played 6 total people. So that's only one person coming off the bench. You had Hannah Hidalgo, who, of course, led the way with 26 points, 10 assists, and 8 steals. So she did her thing, but it is a matter of the people around her continuing to make their presence known, which I feel like they did from an offensive standpoint, but just got to make sure that they're locking down on defense.
Yeah, I think that's been the biggest problem that we've mentioned time and time again for Notre Dame. They've had some really good wins. I think one of their significant wins where this looked like a team that was going to be really hard to beat in the ACC, and they will continue to be difficult to go up against in the ACC. But I thought they looked best in their USC game. It looked like they were clicking on all cylinders. They were all locking down defensively, which kind of gave them that fuel offensively behind Hannah Hidalgo. There were a couple of extra players that were stepping up, understanding what was needed from them to just give a little. When Hannah Hidalgo is averaging almost 30 points at this point a game, all you need is to give her just a little bit of an additional boost and you're good. You have accomplished your job for the day. But I just think they're still kind of finding their groove in certain spaces, and very curious to see what that's going to look like with the lack of depth that they also have on the team too. But another game today, Washington and Michigan. Washington comes away with a 64-52 victory over number 6 ranked Michigan, which this one was a little bit more of a fair matchup to me in terms of Washington has been in and out of the rankings. They've been really strong to start their season. We also obviously have spoke very highly of Michigan too, but it hurts when a completely unranked opponent is coming in and taking over your spot at number 6.
Exactly. And with this game, this is a strong juxtaposed to the previous one that we were talking about, where it was a lot of offense. It was high scoring. This was a low scoring defensive battle for the most part. I mean, for a game that's 64-52, especially for a team like Michigan, that is one of the most prolific offenses in NCAA women's basketball. They really just struggled to connect, only shot 33% the game. Washington definitely locked up on defense. I also wouldn't be surprised because Michigan just played at Oregon on Monday. That was that double overtime game that was entirely just frantic. So I wouldn't be surprised that turning around and then playing at Washington, being out of their time zones in the Pacific Northwest, I think they experienced some tired legs in there that Washington just ultimately capitalized on. I mean, this is a team, like you mentioned, that has been in and out of the rankings. They're definitely not someone that can be underestimated within the Big Ten. And I look at Avery Howell specifically. She finished with 22 points and 16 rebounds. She was 9 of 14 from the field. So she really had an efficient all-around game. And she really helped to boost Washington this game, who I think they got Michigan at the right time.
I think that's a good point. They got Michigan at the right time. Either way, they get to say that they walked away with a win. But that is kind of a difficult part when you're looking at how large the Big Ten has gotten. When you have a majority of the schools that are in the Midwest around me, you're going to the Pacific, you're coming back. There's a lot going on. So it could have been a little bit of tired legs for Michigan, but nonetheless, great win for Washington. But coming up next, Iowa remains on top. They are the only, I think, out of today, ranked team that didn't experience an upset.
Thank you for making Locked On Women's Basketball your first listen of the day. And thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. If you haven't already, go check out our new Everydayer Club. Access an ad-free audio feed for Locked On Women's Basketball, compatible with Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and every other major podcast app. Go to lockedonwomensbasketball.supercast.com or tap the link in the show notes to learn more.
All right, Nebraska and Iowa. This was another pretty good one today. Iowa, ranked 14th right now, defeats the Cornhuskers 86-76. It was kind of a game of the second half. It was a competitive first half, but this is when the Hawkeyes started to pull away a little bit. Some standout performances for Iowa. Chit-Chat Wright. I just love her name. That's such a good name. Chit-Chat Wright led all scorers with 24 points, 11 of 12 free throws. And she has just been really strong offensively. She understands how to run their offense very efficiently. She's great at facilitating. And when you're looking at some of those front court players that you have in Hannah Stolke, who had a double-double, 21 points and 10 rebounds, and then Ava Hayden, who had 18 points on 8 of 10 shooting. She also does really well at feeding her bigs.
Definitely. She's one of the more dangerous players when she gets that high on ball screen and she's going downhill, either if that's to play make for herself or for her teammates. She just does a great job at, like you said, facilitating that action and knowing where Iowa wants to get their buckets from. Iowa isn't necessarily a team that will push out and be super free flowing and dynamic, but they just stick to some really sound principles. And that's exactly where I think those three players that you mentioned thrived. But for Iowa, I think it was a close game throughout against Nebraska, but Iowa was just the more refined team in the clutch. They were able to get to the free throw line, a large part of that being Chit-Chat Wright, got a couple offensive rebounds to extend possessions. And these two teams were actually pretty even in most stats, but Iowa held the decisive free throw and assist advantage. Iowa was 23 of 28 versus Nebraska 12 of 15, as well as Iowa had 20 assists versus Nebraska's 11. So Iowa had just had that better ball movement as opposed to Nebraska, who can get a little stagnant at times, but they really thrive on their defense.
Yeah, when you're talking about getting that ball movement, too, have to add in Taylor Stremlow, who had 8 points, but she had 8 assists and 3 steals, as you mentioned, getting into a good flow state for the Hawkeyes. On the Nebraska side, Britt Prince led Nebraska with 27 points and was 10 of 18. She stayed aggressive throughout the game. And then Jessica Petrie as well, 17 points. So overall, kind of consistent scoring for Nebraska, but it was kind of a little too late in terms of what you mentioned, can tend to get a little bit stagnant towards the final push of the game.
Yeah, and similar to their last game, which was a loss at home against USC, they put themselves in a favorable spot through their defense, but they're just struggling to close offensively. They had a couple more just end of game errors similar to that against the Trojans, where there are turnovers, a couple of fouls. Britt Prince, she had 17 points in that first half, but cooled down just a little bit in the second. And so when you're not getting the same offensive output from her, that's also where we saw Nebraska's just sets stall a little bit, and they were getting a little stagnant, but they weren't closing out all their possessions with rebounds. I mentioned a couple of O-boards that Iowa got that it was just so frantic that they would get an O-board and either finish, or Nebraska would be caught on their heels and then they would turn around and foul. And this is the second game in a row where Nebraska seems like they're in a situation where they want to foul to send Iowa to the free throw line so that they can regain another offensive possession, but they just wait really long. It happened against USC where they were only down 7 and they decided to really run out a lot of the clock before making that decision. And it felt similar to that against Iowa. So I think for Nebraska, you look at the framework and the foundation of this team, and it's really solid. I think they just need to clean up some of their end of game execution.
Yeah, I think at the very end, it comes down to just being able to put a full 40-minute game together. That's such a coach response. I just know that, like, if I asked, I'd be like, yeah, we just got to put the full 40 together. It's going to come together for Nebraska. But it is interesting to see Iowa because I feel like I think of some of these current college teams in their post-star era. Obviously, you kind of look at Iowa in post-Caitlin Clark era. You would think of UConn in their post-Paige Beckers era. But there's still teams that are thriving. I feel like towards the beginning, and maybe this was just me, I thought Iowa, I didn't know if Iowa was going to perform in the way that they have right now. I didn't know if they were going to be within the rankings, but I really like the system that they have been able to put together. I think they have a really strong front court. I think their guards have looked strong overall as well. When we're looking ahead to their schedule for the next coming games, they play again on Monday where they'll go up against Northwestern, and then they go Indiana, Oregon, then they go 3 back-to-back ranked opponents with Michigan State, Maryland, and then Ohio State.
Yeah, so the schedule doesn't get any easier out. Even a game after that, they play USC. So I think that to get this win was a good one, just to give themselves a good pat on the back. They're now 3-0 in Big Ten, so they're one of the highest contenders right now. And I also add, because they're number 14 in the current AP poll, there wasn't one released this past Monday because there weren't any games pretty much the week before. But there's a lot of shakeup now. We've seen some of these, like I mentioned, Titans go down. Number 6 went down. Number 7 went down. Number 5 went down. So there's a little room to shake and bake. And I wonder if Iowa is going to be one of the teams to have the capability to make that leap.
Yeah, I forgot to mention too, after USC, they also play UCLA after that. So not getting any easier for the Hawkeyes or realistically anyone in the Big Ten. But I think today proves that anyone can be beaten within this conference. And I think that's the most exciting part of it all. I'm very curious to see what the AP poll is going to look like this upcoming week with all these upsets.
I really have no idea. I think, like I said, 5, 6, and 7 all went down. When you look at 8, 9, and 10, that would be TCU, Oklahoma, and then Iowa State, who all had solid wins. So, and have looked really strong this season. I could see them making a little bit of traction. But then right outside in the number 11 spot was Kentucky, who beat the number 5. So it'll be some really interesting decisions for some of these voters.
There's a lot going on, but we will see what that poll looks like next week. But that'll do it for us today on Locked On Women's Basketball. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We appreciate it all. And we will see you guys again tomorrow.